our Daisy Girl merchandise store is live, and we are really excited about this. If you have ideas or anything that you want to contribute to it, we welcome ideas, so please do. And then we are going to copycat Mormonism live and have a t-shirt design competition and get some Daisy Girl or Unpacking Mormonism or Raising Crazy t-shirts out.
Unpacking Mormonism and Other Religious Trauma is meant for educational purposes only.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a surprise live from Unpacking Mormonism and Other Religious Trauma. We are really excited to be here with you today to continue our temple series and talk a little bit about child indoctrination and brainwashing and all that other stuff. And I promise Mason is getting a new background soon, so he looks as good as I do.
Oh, that'll never happen.
Okay, well, thank you, Mason. So your background looks as good as mine. So we're really excited.
Can it really be a surprise if you warned everybody like a minute ago?
It's not a surprise. You came up live on the screen, and I went, Mason, your background still sucks.
No. You said this episode was a surprise live, and I said, can it really be a surprise if you warned everybody like a minute ago? I mean,
yeah,
surprise is over.
All right, surprise. We're really excited. All right. So we do have a couple of announcements, as you saw on the intro. If you were lucky enough to see the intro, that our Daisy Girl merchandise store is live, and we are really excited about this. If you have ideas or anything that you want to contribute to it, we welcome ideas, so please do. And then we are going to copycat Mormonism live and have a t-shirt design competition and get some Daisy Girl or Unpacking Mormonism or Raising Crazy t-shirts out. We're also really excited to announce that in January, we are shifting gears a little bit. We've got a new show that will be coming your way that is super psychoeducational, complete with blog posts, worksheets that you can do at home, and interactive opportunities with me. It will be strictly psychoeducational because that's kind of where we're shifting to. They'll be shorter and kind of like free-ish counseling. I
might have to attend.
I almost want to say like free counseling on crack, but that's a problem. But that is what came to my brain. So free counseling in a meal replacement bar. How's that? So anyway, we're gonna have fun with that. So really excited about some of the new projects that we've got coming up. So Mason, are you ready to dive into our show today?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Alrighty. So in our temple series, we've done, kind of the history of temples. Our next show in the temple series, I think we're going to be talking about the Temple Recommend interview questions. We've got some really exciting guests coming back that you've heard from before, and a couple of new guests as well. So we're really excited about that. Hopefully you enjoyed our episodes with Barry Richens. If you haven't, they're long, but I think they're very valuable to see how mental wellness issues can be ignored or perpetuated because of Mormonism, and that most people with mental wellness issues in the church for a long, long time suffered in silence. And I think it's a great episode to do that. And Barry Richens, he was my English professor, and we did college theater. Mason and I did college theater with him back in the good old community college days, where we met in the choir that I didn't want to be a part of. So there we go.
I'm not the only person that gets forced into good things, apparently. And I think that forcing down mental health, of course, is not specific to Mormonism. It is, right. It has been for a long time something that society does, right? For a long time, I guess we didn't really know what to do with it, and so we just hid them in an asylum, right? Or you stuffed it down, and what other choice did you have? And now that we have a choice, certainly more opportunities about what we can do to strengthen our own mental health, it's becoming more obvious how things were repressed, and it's good to always hear those kind of things just to know how did people get through that. And I mean, he's older than dirt, so like just seeing how it happened when he, this is what, 60 years ago, 50, 60 years ago. So just seeing how it happened then was very helpful.
Yeah. So I think that actually plays into today. I'm going to call kind of what we talked about with Barry, like maybe society perpetrated and religion supported issues in mental health. As society has shifted, a lot of religions are like way behind the curveball on bringing these up. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about today. We've got these things that show up in religion. And again, today we're talking specifically about, Mormonism and how much they push the temple on our youth. But the kind of the thought that I have is, the idea is this is good. What we're trying to teach our kids is very good. It helps them live healthy morals and high standards. It helps them get into marriages with people who share the same ideals, which I see the point that they're trying to make, but it doesn't erase the underlying tone that is indoctrination, brainwashing. There's only one right way to do things or live your life. And then also, what are we ignoring because we are pushing an ideal or a purpose so much? So it's kind of like our episode with Barry was about all the things you cannot say. And today's episode is kind of like, this is what you're allowed to say and focus on. And then we're going to continue to ignore the things that you cannot say. So that's kind of
even in that process of indoctrination, as we talk about, raising children nowadays, it used to be, I still struggle with this too. It used to be this idea that I'm the parent, you're going to do what I said because I know best. But it's only obvious as we try to change things that if you can take the time to explain to your child why something matters, I'm not talking about pulling them out of the street, but well, why do I need to eat my vegetables? Why do I need to go to bed on time? Why do I need to go to church? If you can take the time to explain to them why should I marry a person that is also Christian or also Mormon or also Muslim or whatever, why does that matter? If you can take the time to explain it to them, then you have a real convert to the idea. If they accept it for themselves, they're going to hold on to that because they understand it, not just because, well, that's what the Bible says, or that's what we've always been told, or that's the way we've always done it.
Well, and I think it's important to realize that one of the differences between indoctrination and brainwashing and healthy ideals and healthy life lessons is options, and options that are not discredited because it's not the way that you're doing it. So this is, like, let's welcome critical thinking skills. And so that's kind of what we're going to be looking at today, is how religion, specifically in this case, Mormonism, pushes their ideal as if any other option is dangerous, problematic, less than. We're going to really kind of try and illustrate how this is happening. I would say in the Mormon church, I'm going to identify as young as 3. Obviously, kiddos younger than 3 are going to get it, but they don't really have focused lessons in the church house, and their cognitive abilities just aren't there yet. So I would say prior to 3, you're going to have, family home evenings and pictures of the temple and those types of things in your children's rooms in your house. But how much are 3-year-olds actually absorbing on this? So I'm going to say starting at 3 is really when the Mormon church, I feel, starts to push a lot of this. And as your youth in Mormonism grow and become closer to adulthood, it gets pushed more and more and more and more and more and more and more. So that's kind of what we want to do. So
And
one of the
you
go ahead,
know,
Mason,
hold on
sorry.
a second, you know best, but I would say even at 18 months, that's when you start going to nursery in primary, and they always have some sort of lesson. You always have
Yeah.
singing time in nursery. And so while the kids may not understand what's going on, that's the definition of
Right.
brainwashing, right? Is that you're teaching them something that they don't even know that you're teaching them, that they will hold tight to later on, and they won't even understand why.
Right. Absolutely. We're building this in from early age. And thank you, Mason, for whatever reason I was saying 3 thinking nursery, but
Yeah.
3 is when 3 years old, you graduate
Well,
from nursery.
you've
You're right.
been
It is
out of the
18.
church for like a year or 2 longer than me, so I gotta hang on to that stuff.
Forgotten all the intricate details. No, you're correct. And when I was in nursery, not because I never had a calling serving in nursery, but I was the music chorister for primary. So even with nursery, the few times that I would substitute, a lot of the lessons were, here are hands, and God gave you this body, and those types of things. And so anyway, but the music for sure. Even then, I remember teaching, I love to see the temple, and we'd make a little temple with our hands. And, we're talking about, oh, you get to go there to get married. They're 18 months. So yes. Alrighty. So I think for me, Mason and I, we had kind of outlined what we wanted to talk about in our temple series a couple months ago. And I was on one of the ex-Mormon women pages. I don't remember exactly which one. And a member of that private group posted this bookmark. And I've edited it down so that way you don't get the same background. So hopefully no identifying information there. But I thought that this bookmark was so valuable. And so, Alex, if you could pull up the bookmark photo here. So this is somebody was, I think this is a mixed faith family, is the story. And a kiddo came home from church with this bookmark.
You can buy Trauma Bonded, a true story of navigating attachments forged in complex PTSD by me, anywhere books are sold, including Audible.
The world's most exciting podcast, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, New York Times best-selling author and National Radio Hall of Fame inductee, Michael Savage.
I'm Michael Savage, host of the Savage Nation podcast, home of borders, language, and culture. Be here or be nowhere. The Savage Nation podcast.
Catch the Michael Savage podcast on all podcast platforms every Tuesday and every Friday.
It's really hard to see it in this picture, but on the bottom of this bookmark, on the one side, you have no wedding dress. You have a little girl dressed in white, and it says, "My baptism covenants prepare me for ... Flip the bookmark over, and now you have same little girl. And I'd like for you to kind of notice she really hasn't aged. It's more like she's the same age, but she has makeup on. So that was a little bit like, for me, I was like, whoa, grooming. Here where, that's a very young image, and maybe I'm being a little picky. Yes. Okay. I get that. But that was, for me, that was my first thought was, whoa, grooming. But it says on the backside, my temple covenants. So if you read this whole bookmark, it is, my baptism covenants prepare me for my temple covenants. And in Mormondom, you get baptized at how old, Mason?
8
years old. So at 8 years old, instead of preparing our young women for what job do you want to have, at least from a religious perspective, how many lessons, Mason, did we get on good touch, bad touch, stranger danger, just
In the church?
Yeah, in the church.
Oh, almost never.
Personal hygiene.
I remember one lesson about personal
no
hygiene.
bullying. No, before 8, or was that in like
Oh no,
youth?
no, it was youth.
Okay.
Youth,
So
yeah.
we're talking about prior to age 8. How much are we talking about? What are your dreams? What do you want to be when you grow up inside a church community?
I mean, if you consider going to the temple, getting married in the temple, and going on a mission dreams, then a lot. But they're prescribed dreams, right? And there's nothing
Right.
necessarily wrong with those things. But of course, the point here is those are prescribed dreams. Those are
Right.
what you're supposed to do.
Right. That's actually, we had a funny conversation in our car this morning with our daughter Katie. Mason and I were talking about how we've had the opportunity to have our dreams supported within our relationship, in our marriage relationship. And Katie said something like, "Yeah, Dad, when you married Mom, she was your dream girl." And I said, "No, actually, I wasn't." If you've read my book, you definitely know that I was not Mason's dream girl. But rather, the dream was find somebody good enough to marry in the temple.
Right.
And that the dream was finding somebody worthy for the temple. And Mason has just walked out of the room. I must have offended him profusely. Not sure what's going on. So this is a really good illustration of what are we doing to our kids. And obviously the meme, for those of you who are not watching the live show, the meme that I created on this was indoctrination, brainwashing, or both. What are we doing? I also probably, if I could go back, I would put the thing inoculation, because Mason, what you were talking about with like that, the 18-month-olds entering nursery and we're giving it to them and just, these little snippets over and over and over again. We're also inoculating, much like the science behind vaccines. If I introduce you to a little bit of it in passing, it's not a live virus, so it won't take over your whole brain, but I'm giving it to you in teeny tiny doses every Sunday, every, Wednesday night, activity day girl or youth group or whatever they call it. Now, what are we focusing on? And then,
So hold on a second.
Yeah.
I love the idea there, but I wouldn't call it inoculation, because the purpose of inoculation is to make it so that you're less susceptible to something when you come in contact to it. And I don't feel like the church really makes you less susceptible to something when you come in contact with it. It makes you less likely to come in contact with it. And those aren't the same thing.
So I'm smiling because I, of course, disagree with you. When I say inoculation, I mean, I'm inoculated so that way when an opportunity that is presented to me that does not fall in line with the temple, I don't catch it. So things like Mason, in our own life, if you had known that I was not a virgin, would you have continued to pursue me as a potential marriage partner?
This is where I mute myself so that you can't hear any of my answers, right? I'm just going to talk.
Just be honest. No shame. For me, there's no shame. I'm not angry. I'm not hurt by this answer at all.
So I'm glad there's no shame for you. Let me just tell the viewership, there's still shame for me, because I would not probably have continued, because that was important to me. I was certainly a virgin. It was something that I aspired to. I was proud of. And I don't think that at 20 years old, 22 years old, 21, 22 years old, I had the ability to see past that and see you. So if I'd had that information, I wouldn't have seen you. I would have only have seen something, well, as bad as it sounds, I would have seen something dirty.
Right. A quote unquote, my sin.
Yeah.
You would have seen my sin. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And why?
Because in the church, we get taught the law of chastity as a value. Even in the Bible, like, who can measure the value of a virtuous woman? Her value is higher than rubies, right? This is not just a a Mormon thing, it's a Christian thing, but I think it's even more intense in Mormonism. You know, we get taught, you know, we've talked about the cupcake or the, you know, somebody that's licked the cupcake or the cookie that has all good ingredients except for one, you know, tablespoon of poop or something like that. And it's almost always, in my recollection, it's usually used as a reference to chastity. And so we're taught that, and ironically, we're also taught that repentance is a very real thing, but we're taught that maybe that doesn't count when it comes to choosing your partner, right? And there is no real forgiveness, quote unquote, that will then allow that person to be as perfect as you thought they were.
Right. And this goes back to like the talks about it would be better for you to come home from your mission in a casket than unworthy. Referring, and I don't remember the exact quote, I'm probably butchering it, but basically meaning it's better for you to come home from your mission dead than having broken the law of chastity. Right. And dishonor.
Yeah,
and then the other thing here, Mason, is, you know, you say from the Bible, a virtuous woman, her price is high above rubies. In Mormonism, and I'm sure other religions as well, virtue is automatically connected to the law of chastity. So the law of chastity, for those who are not familiar with Mormonism, the law of chastity basically means our sexual conduct code, which is complete abstinence, double dating until you're 18, no like heavy making out. Really, it kind of comes down to a quick peck on the cheek or the lips. Like your parents, I think, didn't kiss. Is this correct, Mason? Your parents didn't kiss until they were in the altar of the temple.
Mm-hmm.
So
that was what my mom wanted to do.
Yeah. Your mom wanted to be so virtuous, or law of chastity, clean, that she wouldn't even kiss your father until they were already married. Like,
and I think
they
that's
said yes, and then they kissed. Hang on. Oh no, go ahead. Sorry, I'll come back to my.
I think that's
definition.
I think that's a big part of this too. Is that if as a religion you can teach something as important as repentance, you know, it doesn't matter what you do, with a couple of exceptions. It doesn't matter what you do. You can be fully cleansed and clean because of the atonement of Jesus Christ. But if you also allow pervasive ideas like, well, if it's important for us to not have sex before we get married, it's even better if we also don't kiss. If we don't even put ourselves in any kind of a situation where that might be a temptation, that's better. Now I'm on moral high ground. Now I am more righteous. Now I am the better person. I'm celestial material now, not in the future. And we might not teach that openly in the church, but it's a very pervasive idea. It would be celebrated. Probably lots of people told my mom that she was crazy for doing that. And probably lots of people said, you know what, that's really good for you. And when what should have happened is some leader should have been able to sit down, or her mom sit down with her and say, hey, what's going on in your head? What are you thinking? What's going on?
Yeah.
Because this is probably a little over the top. You probably don't need to be doing this. Tell me what's going on in your life. But we love the extremism. It was
a badge of honor.
If
badge of righteousness.
If staying on the 10-yard line is what is expected, never getting on the field is even better.
Right. And I think that, you know, one of the reasons why we're pushing this law of chastity thing is because now we're not talking about healthy sexual boundaries for life. We're not talking about intimacy and connection with your partner for life. We're talking about absolutely don't touch it. It's bad. It's horrible until you're married. And then as soon as you get married, you get the flip of you need to have babies right away. And, you know, women, you need to make sure that you're meeting your spouse's needs, because masturbation is against the law of chastity. And what that ends up doing is a biological male. You know, we kind of have I'm going to call it a soft idea in my field, but basically it is a biological male needs to ejaculate around every 72 hours for their health and wellness. And so, whether you meet that or not, that is very soft science, y'all. That is not a hard and fast statistic. It's just kind of like, hey, on average, let's whatever. But if you've got a man who cannot masturbate, and now you're in a marriage and the man is getting appropriately and biologically supposed to aroused and frustrated when they're not able to have that level of a release, who's the only person that it's righteous to catch the little semen bubbles? Like, they're not even supposed to be spilled on the ground. We can go really extreme again. But now we've got this problem with, we have not taught about sexual health, sexual boundaries, consent. Like, we're not talking about that within the realms of a healthy relationship. But now the woman is supposed to be the one that's there, which means men are pressuring their wives into something their wives are not always comfortable with. And I know that when I've worked with my LDS couples, it's a pretty common issue to have non-consensual sex within a relationship. And I'm not talking necessarily about rape, although I've seen that as well. We probably need to, put a content warning on this. So content warning moving forward. And then when this comes out in the live show, Alex, we need to put a content warning in there that we're going to talk about this. But so marital rape, yes, that's a real thing. Want to make sure that that's a real thing, but I'm talking about kind of the obligatory, I really don't want to, but my husband is grumpy, so I'm going to appease him because he doesn't have another option. And so this is kind of where this purity culture before you get to the temple, and everything from the time you're 18 months up is about staying worthy so that you can enter the temple with another equally worthy partner, is problematic.
Yeah.
The other thing, Mason, that I don't want to forget is that, you talk about this virtuous woman, what is the worth of a virtuous woman in the Bible? And when I look up the definition, so this is from, I don't even know what, I Google search. Oh, it's from the Oxford Languages Dictionary. And I just highlighted a bunch of stuff I don't want to. Here we go. The definition from Oxford on what is virtue, it is behavior showing high moral standards. And then when I come down here, it says a quality considered morally good or desirable in a person, a good or useful quality of a thing. And then archaic definition is the virginity or chastity, especially of women. So, when we talk about, because virtue was not added to the young women values, which we probably should have pulled that up. That might be a good thing to talk about during our interview questions portion. But our young women's values, the thing that they stand up and repeat, like the Pledge of Allegiance before every young women's anything, they added in virtue after I was done with young women's, meaning sexual purity. So we're also we're loading our language, we're changing the definitions of things in order to push this idea that you're only valuable if you're sexually pure, which means a virgin who has not had any type of real making out or sexual exploration prior to marriage. But we're not teaching anything else about connecting or having a healthy relationship. We're not teaching any relationship skills other than don't do. So go ahead, Miss.
Yeah. So I want to add just two things, I think, to this idea, because we're talking about the indoctrination. We're talking about both the implicit and explicit meanings that come from situations. Is actually something that I thought of a long time ago and I've never found a place for it in what we've talked about. And I think it fits in today. Great. So for those of you that grew up Mormon, there's a group called Afterglow. They're a very popular music group that does almost hymn-like type things. One time, several years ago, they did basically a country album. Well, in that album, it's called The Power of Love. And I love the overall meaning of this song, but I just want to quote a couple lyrics that really speak to this idea. It says, Kelly's got a secret she's trying to hide. Just thinking about it tears her up inside, but it won't be long till her secret will show. Then her mommy and daddy are both going to know she ain't the princess they thought she had been. And what really kills me about that is because this girl, quote unquote, made a mistake, according to their standards, she got pregnant, which is obviously what it's about. She's not the princess they thought she was. And we have now in this song, and this, of course, isn't Afterglow. This is a pervasive idea in Mormonism and in religion as well. Like if you look at things that have gone on in Muslim states, they'll kill a woman for having sex outside of a marriage, even if it was rape, even if it wasn't their fault, they didn't have a choice in the matter, they will still get murdered because they are spoiled goods now.
And I want to just interrupt you. Extremism Muslim, because that's not mainstream, but in the extreme religious sects of that, absolutely yes. Keep going.
That's fair, yeah. And I will first thing, like I don't know that much about the Muslim religion in general. I've been to Afghanistan. I've been to Iraq, where we have talked about and seen these kinds of things. My brother will tell a story about a massacre that he came upon as a soldier that has really made him struggle to deal with anybody of that religion. And so it can be very, very harsh. It would be similar to judging all of Mormonism by the Mountain Meadows massacre. It's not a fair judgment, but it is something that is connected. And so people will make that judgment. But the idea being that your value is intrinsically tied to your chastity.
Right.
And it just makes it so difficult for us to value people in their humanity, because people will make those quote unquote mistakes. They'll make those choices that will lead them to a place that they technically are not supposed to be. And now they've lost their value. Right. There's another one that I wanted to add to, also from a song. It's in the children's songbook called When I'm Baptized. And the words I want to say is, I know that when I am baptized, my sins are washed away. But the idea is you're having 8-year-old kids. I mean, this is probably the most popular song sung at baptisms.
Right.
You're having 8-year-old kids talking about their sins being washed away, but the doctrine of the church is they don't have any. Constantly talking about, I'm going to get baptized so that all my sins are going to get washed away. And when I was in the bishopric and when I was a bishop, I made it I made a point of explaining that isn't the case. There are no sins washed away today. You don't have any. But the idea is we're so petrified of being imperfect, having sins, that it is focused even on the 8-year-old kids. Like, even though there's no sin that exists, we can't take the time to explain, look, you don't have any sins, but this baptism is so that when later on in your life you have sins, because you will, because you're human, the baptism helps you to be able to repent of those things. It's the indoctrination. It's that we're so focused on sin because we're terrified that if I walk out of this building right now and get hit by a car, am I pure? Am I clean? Do I have any sins that I haven't dealt with? Because I want to go back to God. And it's kind of a ridiculous, it's an unattainable moral value.
So let's take a quick commercial break. Unpacking Mormonism. We'll be right back.
Shop Plato's Closet tax-free August 2nd through 4th for back-to-school styles. We sell the trendy, gently used styles you need to make a difference in the world and in your wallet for back-to-school shopping. Save up to 70% off regular retail prices by choosing recycled styles. Save even more when you shop tax-free this weekend. Make a change that others can respect and repeat. Shop Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley this year for your back-to-school looks. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.
Well, and it's a great example of how our kiddos are being indoctrinated at such a young age.
Yes.
And it's this idea that even before you knew how to make a choice, because I mean, yeah, the Mormon doctrine teaches that our children can't have sin until they're at least 8 years old because there's no accountability there. And so we've got this idea then that these kiddos have to get baptized to wash their sins away, to repent, and all of these rules you have to follow, which oftentimes leads to high levels of anxiety,
Yeah.
especially in our more type A personality humans, the ones that are, focused on details and highly motivated and your go-getters. And so really what we're doing is we're laying the groundwork for religious OCD or scrupulosity.
Sure.
I wanted
The
to
story before you move on, the story of Spencer W. Kimball saying that he knelt down and repented every night. He
Right.
repented of anything that he might have done wrong. And what is the natural occurrence? Every child in the church heard that story and went, "Oh my gosh.
right,
If
the
the
prophet.
prophet is repenting
Mhm.
every day, I better stay on top of my game." And that's
Well, and
not the message they need to hear.
And it really leads into this fear of I've got this God who can't tolerate me
Yes.
unless I'm
He
perfect.
won't let
But
me
he
in.
also created me so that I would not be perfect.
Right.
And so it's this really, you lose love, you lose value when you're not perfect. And it leads to so many issues later in life. And I think the issue is that it gets whitewashed in this, well, I'm teaching my children good values, so it's okay. And I'm like, but when we're teaching our kiddos good values with this is the end goal and this is the best, we're taking away critical thinking skills. We're taking away the opportunity for them to, stretch their wings and through trial and
Yeah.
error, really figure out who are you? What do you actually want? I like Mason earlier, you had said it is the prescribed way. And if you take the prescription and in our next slide, which is the temple, obey. So Alex, go ahead and pull that up for us. The temple image here, we are, so I put on here the song I Love to See the Temple, written by Janice Kapp Perry, right, Mason?
Yes.
Okay, so written by Janice Kapp Perry, is sung in Mormon chapels and Mormon families. It was actually one of my favorite primary songs for eons and eons and eons. It's sung everywhere. This is a worldwide, translated into so many different languages, and we start singing this song, and I put 3 to 17. It's actually 18 months old to 17. So I will make that adjustment before we release this on our social
and more
media.
specifically to 12, but it continues after that.
No, we sing I Love to See the Temple quite often, at least in the Young Women's, for like our opening songs. Like it was, what can people play on the piano?
Right.
And so I sang this all through youth. It was sung at my youth camps, like girls camp. It was sung. I mean, especially for me. I don't know about the
boys,
guys.
The boys didn't do that very much, but I can see where you're coming from. So.
Yeah, for the girls. I mean, and this is kind of like, okay, so this is a San Diego temple. The reason I put this here is this one was always my favorite. I've never been on the inside of the San Diego temple. I've only ever been on the outside. But the line that I pulled up is, I love to see the temple. I'll go inside someday. I'll covenant with my Father. I'll promise to obey. And then it goes on into the chorus, for the temple is a holy place, a place of love and beauty. And then that changes to where families are sealed together and whatnot. And so my question again here is, indoctrination, brainwashing, or both? I remember getting as a youth activity, going to the temple in leaders' wedding dresses and dressing up and getting my picture, 12, 13, 14 years old in a wedding dress, in front of the temple with, this is supposed to be my goal. My goal is, to marry a returned missionary who can take me to the temple, and any other guy out there is not good enough. He's off limits. And if you read my book, one of the reasons why my parents were so determined that they were doing the right thing for me was because my boyfriend that I had sex with was not Mormon. He couldn't take me to the temple. He was not good enough for me. We didn't look at all at the qualities that he had that were positive. I mean, yes, there were some, concerning qualities, and there were some mental health issues there, but there was no education. There was no talking through it from the standpoint of healthy relationship boundaries, understanding some of the struggles that can come up. It was none of that. It was, he's not good enough. Therefore,
Right.
our efforts that turned into holding me captive in my own home for months, physical, mental abuse, like it was horrible. Again, read my book. All because the guy that I liked didn't meet the standards that had been drilled into my head from the time I was itty bitty.
Well, and
And,
I
go
would
ahead,
offer
Mace.
too that it's not even, or again, read the book. It's not even that he wasn't good enough for you. It's that he wasn't good enough for them.
Right.
And so there's this projection as parents, we are failures. Like if my son doesn't go on a mission, I'm a failure as a parent. If my kids don't get married in the temple, I'm a failure as a parent, because the most important things they could do in their lives are go on a mission and get married in the temple. And so I've failed them, even though this is entirely their choice. And the church makes it a reflection on me. And
Right, well,
I struggled with that when, our oldest decided he didn't want to go on a mission, which ultimately really was the best decision for him. I really struggled with that. And part of that was because I'm a bishop at the time and my son's not going on a mission. It is a reflection on me. And of course, some of the things that our kids do are absolutely appropriately reflections on parents, but this isn't one of them. This wasn't that situation, but in the church, it is. I'm going to say always, and I'm sure that's not true. So very often it is reflected directly onto the parents,
right.
and it's just not a healthy reflection. So
Well,
that's
and
what was going on with your parents, is that you're a failure now, right? You've lost your virtue, and so everybody's going to reflect on me. They're going to look at me as a parent and say, "What the hell did you do wrong?"
mhm. Well, and I think too, Mason, one of the things that we talked about when Eric was in that place was, you were like, he's ruining his life. He's throwing away, like you were like catastrophizing that pretty
That doesn't sound like
significantly.
me at all.
And I'm a failure and all of these things. And I got really mad at you because I was like, our child has a solid career plan, a solid college plan, a money in the bank, like super responsible, super respectful. He understands relationship. He's great at communicating. Like it was almost like everything else that he had worked for and achieved no longer mattered because he wasn't going on a mission, which for the men, so for the women, it's sexual purity is what's just pushed, pushed, pushed. For the guys, that stay away from porn, don't masturbate, and go on a mission.
Right.
Push, push, push,
Right.
push, push.
She ain't the princess they thought she had been.
Right.
Right. Your value is tied to those choices.
Right. Well, and I think too, one of the concerns here is that when you look at the temple, if I had married Michael, so if we go back to my experience, my personal experience. So Michael took the missionary discussions. He was willing to get married into the Mormon church and us do our year and whatever else it was supposed to be, so that he could marry me in the temple. He was willing to do that, even though he did not believe one iota of what the Mormon church taught. He was willing to do that in order to get married to me. Now, one of the things that's really disconcerting is I was 16 and we're talking about marriage, like real life marriage, when I'm 16 years old. I mean, my mom was, playfully matchmaking me from the time I was teeny tiny, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like the neighborhood boy was going to make a
This was
good
serious.
husband. Like it was serious, right? Because the push for girls to get married young is
Well, and
so
also
much pressure.
you
So
crossed
we're
the line.
oh
You
yeah,
crossed the line. So,
right.
and unfortunately, that's been a historical issue, right? If you cross the line and you get pregnant, not necessarily if you have sex, but if you get pregnant, there for a long time there has been the push. Well, you need to get married, and you
Right,
need
you
to get
got
married to
pregnant,
the
so now you
person who
have
got
to-
you pregnant.
Right, no matter
And
what.
so, in that case, it became a serious conversation because you had crossed that line.
Right. So, and my dad was like, absolutely not. You're going to, if there's a baby's going up for adoption,
Right.
because the options were place the baby for adoption or get married, because the baby deserves to have a temple marriage. It wasn't
Right.
a marriage. It was a temple marriage. And, my point is it was such a selfish thing, for me to expect, for one, but I was 16, again, indoctrination or brainwashing. But if I had married Michael in the temple, if we had followed through with all of that, his family would not have been invited to our wedding. They'd have
Right.
had to stand outside because they weren't Mormon. They were not, quote unquote, worthy. They didn't pass all those tests. And we're going to talk a lot in our interview question about, some of the things that you have to do to get a temple recommend. And one of them, the only one I'm going to talk about right now, is you have to be a full tithe payer. You cannot get in to that building unless you are paying the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so, but Michael's family, his brothers, I think about our wedding, Mason. My siblings weren't at the wedding. They
Right.
weren't old. Your siblings were not at the wedding because they weren't old enough yet. Like
Right.
one brother was on a mission when we got married. But yeah, like they weren't inside with us. It was like our parents, our grandparents, our aunts and uncles, but siblings were not inside to witness that.
Well, and
event.
maybe you can speak to this from a mental health standpoint, but what you've created in that situation is exclusivity.
Mhm.
Right? This is the special thing. So because it's so special that even family members can't be there, you've elevated it.
Certain family members.
Well, right.
Only the
right.
good ones. Only the
Right.
good enough ones.
Well, even your righteous siblings can't be there because they're not old enough yet. You've elevated it now far above so many other things because look, this is so important. Even you can't go.
Well,
We want your parents to be there, but they haven't made the right choices. They can't be there. That's how important this is. And so you've given it almost like a godly stature kind of a
Right.
thing.
Well, and let me put this plug in. Okay. So Mason and I were active members for all of our adoptions. When our children were sealed to us because they were adopted. So Eric was our only kid. So we had, again, just the exclusive few that could come in. And at that point, none of my siblings were able to be there for such a special and what was considered a sacred event. But when Brig was sealed to us, Eric, who was 3.5, 4, was allowed to be there.
Yeah.
When Abigail was sealed to us, I want to say Eric would have been what? Mason, give me, how is he 11? I think Eric is
He'd have been about 10 or
11. 11 years older. So between 11 and 12, because you can't have your adopted baby sealed to you until the adoption is legally finalized.
Right.
But Abby got sealed to us. Eric was allowed to be there. And when Tyler got sealed to us, so now Eric is 14, 15, 16. He was a junior in high school. Because
Well,
it
not
happened
just
right
Eric.
before we moved.
All
Right.
of our kids were there.
But I'm saying, right. So Eric, who was, I'll say, so he would have been 16, I think, 16, 17, because that was in 2019 when Tyler got sealed to us. So 2019. So Eric is like 17 years old. Brig was there. So that would have put Brig at 14, 15. Hayden was there, 11. Katie. So little kids are allowed in the temple to watch their siblings get sealed to their parents, but not for the temple marriage
Right.
of their siblings. What the fuck is the difference? It's the same damn room. There's no secret sauce going on. The clothing is the exact fucking same. I mean, you still have the dumb veil and the headdress and the green apron and all the robes and the sashes and everything. I was still dressed like a frickin' idiot in there.
Beautiful.
With you. No. I never felt beautiful in that shit. I felt hot. Like hot.
Doesn't
Not
matter what you
not
felt.
sexy hot, Mason. This is where Landon comes in and goes, literally or figuratively? Literally, I was burning up and dying of heat stroke in there. Okay. So, yeah, this is
But you've
what's the
you've
problem?
elevated it to an existential level, right?
Right.
You've made it exclusive. You've made it an opportunity that you don't want to miss.
Right.
And so you will do whatever you need to do to get there because there is no feasible alternative.
Right.
Even though there is,
Including marrying the wrong person simply because they can cross all the T's and the I's
right.
if they have actually even been honest, because getting in there dishonestly is a thing in Mormonism. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. My grandma and grandpa Lee, at the time, so that they later got divorced when my dad was 9, they went to the temple pregnant with my Aunt Bonnie because they didn't want to be honest. And then Aunt Bonnie was born early, and then everybody knew,
there's a stigma, right? There's a
right?
stigma there
Hmm.
that you're less valued if you
Right.
haven't been to the temple. You're less valued
Right.
if you haven't gone on a mission. And some of that will kind of go away over the years, but at least initially, you're much less valued because obviously you didn't have the faith to go on a mission, or obviously you screwed up. You didn't want to get married in the temple. There's obviously we're making these judgments even though you don't have any idea
Right.
why.
We're not giving our kiddos the critical thinking skills to choose their own way without devaluing them as humans, calling them unworthy, excluding them from certain community environments or social environments.
Yeah.
And then when our kids do this, so again, if I had married Michael, how would it have set us up for having positive relationships with either side of the family, him to my parents, me to his family, when we got married under number one, under false pretenses, and number two, excluding all of the people in his life that were important to him? What does that set you up for moving forward? And how the hell is that a positive experience for everybody involved? The only time that it ends up working out, like Mason, for you and I, it was fine. It was what was the norm. My siblings, from the time they were little, knew they wouldn't be there. Neither of us really missed them because that was just our norm.
It's just the way it was. Yeah.
Right. But
if
it was just
parents
the norm.
hadn't been there,
But
or aunts or uncles,
the only reason it worked for us is because both of our families were all active. Nobody in our families, our direct immediate families, got excluded because of not being enough.
well, some did. You have a couple of aunts or uncles that couldn't have been there for those reasons. And in a way,
I'm talking more like parents, siblings.
no,
like
I get it.
Direct.
I
Yes,
get it.
I
But
agree.
but for people that didn't grow up in the church, you are immediately teaching them that the church is more important than the family.
Yes.
It may not be what is actually going on, but you are teaching them that. Like,
Right.
I'm going to get married in this temple. You're not going to be able to be there, and I'm sorry, but I'm doing that because this is more important.
Well, and I today honestly cannot imagine my kids not showing up for one of their siblings' weddings. Like, our kids are such good friends. Like, they are right there. Like, the actual wedding, the actual joining of like, our siblings were there for the reception, the cake and the presents and the dancing and the party. Sure, they were there for that. But for them to actually miss hearing the vows and watching at that moment that just is so, magical for most newlyweds, I wouldn't want siblings to miss out on that opportunity for a big wedding like that.
Yeah. Well, let me ask this question too, because we've kind of had this conversation before. Who benefits by excluding the family from the wedding? Because it's not the family. It's not the couple. It's not the siblings or the children. They don't benefit from being excluded from this wedding. So who benefits? The only person that benefits is the church.
Yeah.
Even to the point it used to be you couldn't get married civilly on Thursday and get married in the temple on Friday. You could not do it. If you
Not
got
in the
married
United
civilly,
States. Not in the United States. You
right.
could
Well,
in Mexico, you could in
there
some
were some
countries.
exceptions. There were
Mhm.
some exceptions, but there weren't always exceptions.
Right.
So there had been some exceptions made. But when you and I were growing up, if we'd gotten married on Thursday civilly, we could not have gotten married in the temple for a year. It doesn't matter that we had temple recommends. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter that we were completely worthy to go into the temple. We could not do it.
They wouldn't let us.
Right. And so the church is the one that benefits because they
Mhm.
have the power. They hold your salvation in the palm of their
Hostage.
hand.
They hold it hostage.
They hold
because
it hostage.
You have to pay to play. So they
Right.
hold it hostage.
So
And, on that line, I want to talk again, our marriage, Mason, when you started talking about this, it reminded me of my Aunt Ginny, who I absolutely love. She's like a second mama to me, and she's been amazing, especially since I don't talk to my mom. She's been a huge support for
right.
me during some really difficult times in my life. When I got married, my Aunt Ginny had not been wearing her garments or attending Mormon services, she was not a TBM at all. She was softly out. She was probably a lot of chemo type
Right.
thing and whatnot. When we sent her the wedding invitation, she did everything she needed to do to fake it, to get in there. She put her garments back on. She did whatever it was her bishop needed her to do, paid her tithing, whatever, so that she could have a temple recommend to be at my wedding.
Yeah.
And then my gay uncle, who I love and adore, he's portrayed in my book as my uncle Dallas, and love and adore him. He and I were close when I was little. We had a little butting of heads when I was a teenager at my other uncle's wedding. But he was not allowed to be there at all because he was gay.
Right. The option wasn't even open to him, really.
Yeah, the option was not even open. Like, he didn't even come for the reception because why? Like,
right.
and looking back, I'm like, I regret that because frankly, I would have loved to have had Dallas at my wedding.
Yeah.
I would have.
Well, and the church has changed that now. Even in the United States, if for some reason you choose to get married civilly beforehand, you can get married the very next day at a temple. And they've changed it because what used to be, I hold the power, I hold your salvation in the palm of my hand. Now they're losing people over. And
Right.
so they've changed it. Like you mentioned, I think early on in this, that religion is always behind the times. So they don't change it because, you know what, this is a really good idea. They change it because they're losing people.
Right.
And it didn't matter to them until they started to lose people. You got to put up with it. Like missionaries. Yeah. I got to call my family, I think 3 times a year. I think in my mission, it was 3 times a year. Missionaries now, they get to call every week. Why? Because they're losing people.
Right.
They
because it's
need
traumatic.
people to be there.
Right. It's traumatic.
But it's not because of their mental health. It's because they want people on missions.
Yep.
And so they're behind because they're not thinking about what is best for their parishioners. They're thinking about what is best for this organization.
Well, maybe the next step that they can take to improve is to allow younger siblings in to watch bigger siblings get married.
Right.
Just like our kids got to go into the temple so many times to watch their sibling get sealed to their parents. Why that was allowed and them coming to our wedding isn't makes no fucking sense. All right, Mason, did you want to go over your slide really quickly? And then we can wrap things up. Your gesture butts.
Sure.
I like your gesture butts. Look at the gesture. Aren't their little butts so cute? Their little tights. This is like,
and his pants are down, just in case you're wondering, from all the vibration. His pants are coming down.
Of course.
So for those of you that haven't seen this.
I love this because it's men in leggings. And now this dress is only okay if you're gay or female, which is wrong. Just saying. I need to see some more men in leggings. Come on, world. Let's do this.
So
go ahead, Mason.
Quick background. This is the movie The Court Gesture with Danny Kaye. And at one point in time, the powers that be need him to be able to fight for the princess, but they want him to die. The guy that he has to fight is a real knight and just a stud. But they need him to be a knight. And of course, they're like, normally to be a knight, it takes months or years even of doing all your provings. And so they prove him like in a day with help and all that kind of stuff. And they get him here to this point, and the person that's speaking is like, you that are here, do you deem this person worthy to be a knight? And everybody shouts, yay, verily, yay. And they do that this is like several minutes of this movie.
It's obnoxious.
But it is a little bit obnoxious because it goes on for a long time. But the idea being that this wasn't his choice. He was thrust into this situation. He tries to get away several times, but he is unable to because all the knights around him are holding him fast where he needs to be. And I feel like there's maybe a slight difference. There is a big difference. There's a difference between having your friends around you supporting you in something that you want to do, and having people around you supporting you in what you're supposed to do. They're not the same, although oftentimes they look the same. They're not the same. And what happened in this situation is he was unable to choose for himself. He was forced into the situation. He was held into the situation. And I feel like that happens a lot in churches with indoctrination, is there is no alternative.
Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One with pico and creamy chipotle ranch, and the other with bacon and avocado ranch. Chicken expert since 1990. Taco expert since now. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
And I'll give an example here. This happened several years ago in General Conference. One of the sisters got up and gave a talk about them being at a ward. I think it was in Hawaii or one of the islands or something, but they were at a state conference, I think, and there were a whole bunch of young men, early 20s, on near the front row, or they noticed that there was a whole bunch of them, like 40 of them on the front row, and they all got sustained or accepted to receive the Melchizedek priesthood. And so she asked this stake president or bishop or whatever, what happened here? And they said, well, we went over the rolls and we noticed there were a whole bunch of young men that weren't attending anymore. And as we investigated, we found out that they were all young men who hadn't served missions. And so we went out and we found them, and we rescued them, and we brought them back. And isn't this great? And yes, if they want to be a part of the church, that is great. But what was missed is this idea that because they didn't serve missions, they walked away and no one stopped them, because the stigma is so real that people cannot overcome it too often. I'm not saying everybody, but too often they cannot overcome the stigma because it is so strong. It's so pervasive. And that's what I kind of got from this, was that we're saying the right words, we're doing all the right things, but we're doing it because we have no choice, or feel like we have no choice but to do this, because we'll be cut off or whatever if we don't.
Well, and that's kind of where I am. So you're talking about these 40 young men or whatever, right? And what happened, and really what you see is they didn't do it the way you said.
Yep.
So they felt more comfortable not coming back.
Yep.
And so that's, I mean, honestly, I'm kind of sad that they all came back. That's like a little concerning for me. Not for any reason other than, I would have a hard time trusting a community that put me on the outside because I didn't fall in line on one life decision for whatever reason. But the fact that was the issue. The issue is they didn't do it the prescribed way. They lost their community.
Right.
They lost certain supports. And I remember counseling a young adult within the church, and that individual's fear was, I'm gay. I don't believe this. I don't want to serve a mission. But my parents have told me if I don't go on a mission, they won't pay for college. Again, this is, if you don't do it the way we say, there is going to be punitive consequences.
Yep.
And we're not talking about something that actually brings harm to anybody. We're talking about forced volunteerism that you also have to pay for. Not only is this go on a mission, preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, we're going to put you in oftentimes really difficult living situations, and you're going to pay for it, and you're dependent on others for food and rides and whatever else. It's a traumatic, it can be a traumatic experience depending on where you're assigned to and who your mission.
Right.
It's mission president roulette, and all of these other things.
Right. And there's
so,
a lot of there's a lot of value in those kind of experiences. Like, I gained a lot from being a missionary, but it was my choice to be there. Like, if I had felt forced to be on a mission, I would have missed some of those opportunities because I wasn't looking for them. I was angry. Or if I served with a missionary who said that his parents promised him a Lincoln Navigator if he came home worthy from his mission. This idea that we're going to incentivize.
That's what my office manager drives, by the way.
Right. We're either going to incentivize or punish. Like, I'm not sure what the penalize, incentivize or penalize this choice, quote unquote, right? If that's what you're doing, you've almost made it not a choice at all. Because what kind of a young man who wants to go to college and doesn't feel like he has the means is going to say no to doing this?
Right.
If that's the best ticket for him to get where he wants, and maybe he comes out stronger for the church, maybe he comes out weaker for the church, but it wasn't his choice to do it. And you know what, frankly, speaking as someone who needs to get forced into a lot of decisions in my life, like I don't want to say that no parent should ever try and quote unquote force their child into a decision because they feel like that is what's best for them and maybe that kid will grow. But that's a parent. It's not an organization. And if the parent says, look, you're going on a mission because I went on a mission and I really benefited from that. Whether you convert anybody or don't convert anybody, this is going to be a good experience for you. I'm going to pay for it. I want you to be there. I want you to make the best of it. For some people, that's going to be the right decision. And for some people, it won't be. But I don't want an organization making that decision for me. I would maybe surrender to a parent who loves me and cares about me, not just about doing the right thing. I might allow them to push me into that decision, but that's the point. Is it's not an organization that's doing it.
Well, and I want to make sure that we clarify: serving a mission is not a prerequisite to get into the temple.
No,
but it is definitely pushed as your only good marriage material if you've served a mission, and the only place that you should be getting married is in the Mormon temple.
Right.
So
well, and the command
ahead.
is every worthy young man needs to serve a mission. So now if you haven't served a mission, lots of people are going to tie into that. Well, he must not be worthy. Your worth is immediately denigrated because you don't make that choice.
Yep.
So
my question is then, okay, how do we, as parents, how do we separate indoctrinating our children or brainwashing our children and not? Because in a lot of ways, I was brainwashed with my math facts. 2 + 2 is 4, 4 + 4 is 8. We do all these flashcards. We repeat it every day. It's, we talk about this as kind of the same thing. There's only one right answer most of the time when it comes to mathematical equations. And so we're going to kind of drill this into your head in order for you to be successful in life. So not all drilling, not all repetitive lessons are bad. Absolutely not. I mean, anybody who's raised a kid is going to know I teach my kid to wash his hands after going to the potty at least 10,000 times before they reach adulthood. And even after that, sometimes. So anyway, not all of this is bad. Really, it is giving them the choice to do something else, teaching them full spectrum without that dogma in the back. Instead of saying you need a returned missionary that can take you to the temple, maybe we need to be talking about you need a partner that you connect with, that you can talk to, that you feel safe with, that you have some things in common, that you can disagree with safely, that
Right.
is going to
What's going to build a healthy relationship.
contribute to the household in the varying ways. What are some of your values? What are some of their values? I remember being like 16-ish, 15, 16-ish. And they said, here, write the things you want in a future partner. And it was like tall, brown hair, blue eyes, return missionary, praise every day. They're not necessarily bad things. And as a 15-year-old, the way you look was definitely more important to me than the way you treated me. Because I was 15 and stupid. Okay. Most of us at 15 are. But being let's talk about qualities in humanity that support strong relationships, not check boxes of accomplishments and whatnot. So let's start talking about that and give our children choices and the ability to make choices different than us, the parent, and support them in it without them losing love, value, worthiness, status, friendships, or their community. We really need to be able to teach our youth how to feel safe, valued, and have decent human conversation. I mean, we're going to say this about anybody right now, because if you just go on any social media platform and you're going to see all of the hate because you don't believe the way I do or think the way I do or have the same opinion as I do. So how do we fix this? We make space for our children and we give them opportunities to disagree and be valued and loved and not lose community, familial relationships, and worthiness, value.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to follow up with, Alex, if you want to do the statistics really quickly that we had. So if you are in disagreement, if you're like, Sarah and Mason, I think you're making too much out of this, I wanted to give you some statistics from the Church of Jesus Christ's own website. If you type in temples into the search bar, you are going to hit over 10,000 results. And on here, if you look at this,
pay dirt, baby.
Yeah. On this, I had to scroll through these pages. Okay, so here's the one, 10,000 plus results. And then on the other one, we have how many pages of results here. I hit like, what is that, 125 or something, and there's still that arrow. And I was, what, Mason, you said like 5 minutes into the search, trying to see, how many hits. And of course, this is for, when temples are mentioned in scriptures and papers, but this is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints website, and it's pulling up all of these things over like 10,000. The church is around 200 years old, and so it was just tons. So you can see it's temples. I didn't put any other things on it, but then when I put in a Google search, general conference talks about the within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, general conference talks on temples, it wouldn't even give me a value. Like it used to say 1,006,100, and it didn't. But I went down and it's just pages and pages and pages when I put in the identifier general conference talks. And these are the twice a year from the leaders. So I would say growing up, I do not remember a single Sunday lesson. Like I would go through an entire, so for me, it was like 3 hours for all of my church life on Sundays or Wednesday night, where we did not bring up a temple at least once. So I was getting it constantly. And then in family home evening, most nights. So it was drilled into my head.
Right. I'm sure that wasn't the case. I'm sure there were lots of lessons where you didn't talk about the temple, but there is no way.
I wouldn't say lots.
I think.
I wouldn't say lots. I'd say
I would say
probably
for me, I would say for me, there were lots of times we didn't talk about the temple, and I'm certain for other people, there's lots of times you don't talk about the temple. But it's what's important is not that there's lots of times that we talk about the temple or don't talk about the temple. It's that so many times that is the focus.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate goal. Ironically, the ultimate goal for a woman is 18 years old, you get married in the temple, right? Whatever comes after that doesn't really matter as long as you just hold to the rod and you endure to the end.
Yep. Endure to the
And
end.
and so yeah, if you're questioning whether or not the temple is a focus of the church, you haven't attended very many general conferences or attended very many meetings, because it quickly becomes very obvious.
Yeah, I had more you got to get to the temple instruction than how to be like Jesus
And
discussion.
ironically,
and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Ironically, you had lots and lots of lessons about getting to the temple and probably zero lessons about what actually happens in the temple, about
Except
what
for
you're
baptisms.
actually
Except for
what
baptisms
you're
for the dead.
actually
Yep.
covenanting to do,
Yeah.
because baptism for the dead isn't your covenant. So you're talking about the covenants that you're going to make. I had zero understanding of what
Right.
happens in the endowment. I had zero understand. Actually, I take that back. I did have some idea of what goes on in the ceiling, because when my mom took me to the MTC for my mission, we went to one of the temples and did sealings there. So I had heard the sealing ordinance. So I had some idea of it, but you don't get taught that.
Right.
There's no preparation. Even the
Right.
prep class, which I've taught, doesn't really talk about the covenants that you're going to
Nothing.
make.
Right. We
No.
talk about getting there. We never talk about what promises you're going to make, what you're going to do. In fact, spoiler alert for moving forward, we don't talk about rituals. We don't talk about names and signs. We don't talk about any of the creepy shit. But what we do talk about is ritualistic praying is wrong.
Right.
Culty shit is wrong.
Right.
Doing the same thing over and over again is wrong. And then we get to the temple and it's like, oh,
Throw
hypocritical.
all that out. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Throw all
So
that out.
we'll be talking about that later. So just want to throw out in closing the mental health hotline, the suicide hotline. If you are struggling, especially here as we are entering the holidays or right after the holidays, if you are in crisis and you need help, please call or text 988. I utilized this service several months ago. I got really, really triggered by something right around the time that my book was either close to coming out or afterwards. And I called them and I was on that line with them I texted them. I was on that for like 45 minutes, was able to calm down, get to a clear brain space and be safe to proceed without having to go inpatient. Like they were really there for me. So yeah, if you're in trouble, if you need help, please text or call 988 from any phone in the United States. I believe the emergency phones too. So like when it's like your phone is on SOS only, you can still call and text 988. So please do so. And finally, if you like what we're doing here at Unpacking Mormonism and you would like to support us, our Daisy Girl Venmo account is live and ready to take your money. We will be in January announcing the nonprofit organization that we are starting up. When Mason says he gets pushed into decisions, what he did not mention was that I bought a horse and then I told him about it. And so he got pushed into that.
The story of my life.
It is
I
the
hear
story of his
about
life.
it
Love
after it's
you.
done,
Love you,
and I
Mason.
have no choice in the matter. The story of my life.
So we will soon have a nonprofit organization option that you can donate to that will help support free therapeutic services for those who are impoverished. And also to help support our nonprofit in developing evidence-based curriculum at our up and coming equine intensive outpatient therapy option. And we will also be making a lot of that available through YouTube and other platforms. And so we're really excited about it. That's like your little teaser as we get those details down. We will be making the announcement in January sometime about what that's going to look like and how you can help out and donate to that nonprofit organization and really help people begin to heal from their trauma with the goal. Our mission is to bring mental health treatment options to the general public at low to no cost. So we're really, really excited about that. And yay, excited to introduce Clementine here as soon as she is officially mine. So, alrighty, thank you so much for listening. It
Thanks
has
for being here,
been
guys.
fabulous. We will see you next time.